Mommy's gotta do a video, okay? Mommy's gonna do a video. Can you be quiet? Or just like a wee little bit? Just a wee little bit? Can you be quiet? Oh, sweet boy. Well, hello everyone, and welcome back, or welcome if you're new here. If you are new here, my name is Carrie, and I'm a TV host, and I live in Kansas City, Missouri, and one of my all-time favorite hobbies is reading books. I read quite a bit, I think. I don't know, you be the judge of that. I think I read more than the average, but less than like your favorite book talker, tuber person. Like I definitely don't read that much. For example, last year I read 50 books. Now when I tell people that in my regular life that I read about 50 books a year, they're like, oh my gosh, how do you do that? Why do you do that? They are like, I am like the book queen to them. But then I go online and I see all these other people and that's like nothing. So I don't know. I like to read. Moral of the story. January was a really good reading month for me, mostly because I have had some downtime in between work, in between jobs. And so I've had a lot of free time, which I have used to read books. Now, as a general rule of thumb, I read a lot more in the winter, and in the summer, I don't read as much because I like to be outdoors. I like the sunshine. I like to exercise, do things like that. And it's just brighter longer. So there's more time for me to do those types of things. In the winter, in the Midwest, there's just not a lot to do in the wintertime. So I either like binge TV shows that I've seen 20 times already, looking at you, Friends, Game of Thrones, things like that, or I read a book. And I've been settling for reading a book a lot lately. So in the month of January, I read 11 books. And today we're gonna talk about them. If you watched my other book video, which is the video where I talked about my favorite books from 2020, then you already know that I am pretty much a library book girl. I don't own a ton of books, and I'm not a big Kindle girly. I will read on my Kindle if it's the only option for me to read a book that I really want to read. But I love my local library. Like I go to the library like once a week. I check out a bunch of books, and like when I'm done, I bring them back. Libraries are the greatest invention of our modern time, if I do say so myself. Like it's just books for free. Like mind blowing. For free, y'all. You can read books for free. Like it amazes me. I love the library. I tend to be a library heavy girly. So for that reason, I don't have the physical books to show you at this moment, but I'm gonna go through via my Goodreads and tell you everything I read in the month of January, my thoughts, recommendations, all that jazz. The very first book I read of the year was The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. This is my first Riley Sager book, which is crazy because I love thrillers, and he is known for writing really good thrillers. So I don't know why it took me so long to jump on the bandwagon of his books, but I'm glad I finally did because later in the month I read another Riley Sager book. The quick and dirty plotline is that our main character, Casey Fletcher, is a recently widowed actress. She is famous and she is like kind of trying to escape some bad press. And so she like skirts away to her family's lake house to kind of like be anonymous for a while, calm down, and let all the bad press go away. So across the lake from her is another house, obviously, and there is another rich and famous couple that lives over there. Their names are Catherine and Tom Royce. Catherine is a former model, gorgeous, beautiful, all the things, and her husband is Tom. He is like a tech dude, investor, blah, 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 blah. So Casey makes it a point to really like kind of start spying on them, honestly, with her binoculars across the lake because she's bored and she has nothing else to do. And she just like slowly starts to notice things that are just kind of weird and odd and just like don't sit right with her for whatever reason. So one day the opportunity kind of presents itself for Casey to become friends with Catherine, and she of course jumps at it and kind of tries to like intertwine herself with this couple in a strange way, and the story kind of goes from there. It's extremely layered, it's extremely fast paced. There are other characters in the book, and there's like kind of subplot lines as well along the way. And it's just really well done. If you have not read Riley Sager, I would encourage you to pick up one of his books if you're into thrillers. Like I said, this is everything I want in a thriller experience. It's fast paced. It's got good character development. It's got a lot of like twists and turns. It's got a lot of subplot lines that were all like tied up nicely at the end, which I appreciate. I don't like a bunch of random plot lines that don't end up like having any resolution that we're just as the reader supposed to forget about at the end of the book. Like, no. You introduce these plot lines, like tie them up for me, please. And I think that Riley Sager does that really well. So this was actually my first book of the year, and it was a 5-star read for me. Definitely recommend. It gave me a reading experience that I want, and like I said, it really tied up things nicely at the end, which I appreciate and really value as a reader. From there, I moved on to a little nonfiction. I read 10X is Easier Than 2X. This book is by Dan Sullivan and Dr. Benjamin Hardy. I actually heard Benjamin Hardy on, I think, the Ed Milet podcast, and it piqued my curiosity enough to pick up this book, and I really did like it. I took a lot of notes, and I think there are a lot of really good takeaways, like tangible takeaways from this book, so I definitely recommend, and I gave this 5 stars as well. I'm not gonna go too much in depth about a book like this because it's hard to go in depth. Like if you read the topic and the flap of the book and it sounds interesting to you, like pick it up, you'll enjoy it. Next up, I moved on to an audiobook. I chose to listen to Tom Lake by Ann Patchett. I actually listened to this on my Spotify premium subscription. I love that they're now offering audiobooks. The other reason why I really chose to listen to this book is because I saw from other reviews that Meryl Streep is the one who narrates this book, and other reviewers were just saying that it was incredible. She did a great job. So I was like, let's do it. Let's jump in. I was on hold for this at the library for a bajillion and 5 years. It was going to be a while till I got my hands on a physical copy. So the audiobook was just the way for me to go for this one. So this book takes place in the spring of 2020. Our main character is Laura, and she is retelling her, I don't want to say life story, but she's retelling a specific summer in her life when she was a young woman. And she's retelling it to her daughters as they are going through the pandemic, obviously, in spring of 2020. All of her grown daughters are back at home on their cherry farm, and they find out that their mom kind of had this other life as an actress with this other actor. She had a relationship with this other actor who's now famous, and they want to hear the story of how their mom, who's now a very simple woman with a simple life, had this amazing summer and this amazing chapter of her life. So she is retelling that to them in 2020. So while it does take place in 2020, there's flopping from time period to time period as she's telling the story. I thought she went back and forth between time periods really seamlessly. It wasn't confusing or anything like that, and there were equal times where I was invested in what was going on in 2020 and also invested in what was going on, back in the day. So really, really well done. My only critique of this, and the reason why I only gave it 4 stars, is because the first couple chapters were really slow for me. I was listening to it, but as I was listening to it, I was like, what is this? This is it didn't make sense. It didn't compute into how the story was going to take off from there, in my opinion. And I really think that the author could have found a better way to thrust us into this whole situation better than how it was done. If it weren't for that slow beginning, this would have been a 5-star read for me, but the slow beginning was just it was too much to overcome for me to give it 5 stars. After that, I moved on to some historical fiction, and I read The Secret Book of Flora Lee. This is by Patty Callahan Henry. Very similarly to Tom Lake, this book takes place in one time period and is told back to another time. So in 1960, our main character Hazel is working at a bookstore, and she comes across a manuscript that comes in that is the exact same as the story that her and her sister used to tell each other when they were children, and it kind of freaks her out, mostly because her sister vanished, disappeared, was presumed dead 20 years ago. So the fact that she has seen this story and she's like, we never told anyone this, is my sister still alive? So it leads her on this wild goose chase to figure out if her sister is still alive or if someone stole their story or what's going on. So that's kind of the premise of it. There's more to it, but I don't want to get too much into it because it unfolds before you in the story, but that's the basis of it. This book was really well done, and I really did enjoy it. I ended up giving it 4 stars because while I did really enjoy it, I was never left really excited to pick it up again, if that makes sense. It was a slow burn. It wasn't the type of book that kept me on my toes, kept me dying to get back to it. But when I did pick it up, before bed, when I read every night, I was always quickly brought back to the story. So the best way for me to describe it is that it's a slow burn, and if you like historical fiction that is a slow burn, I really think you'll like this story. Next up, I went to another audiobook. I decided to listen to The Woman in Me by Britney Spears, another book that I was gonna be on hold for at the library forever, so I listened to it via my Spotify premium membership, and wow. Wow, wow, wow. Where do I begin? I could make a whole nother video about this book. Perhaps I will, honestly, because it is that, I have that many thoughts, let's just say that. The first thing I have to say is that Michelle Williams, the actress Michelle Williams, narrated this book, and she killed it. She did a fabulous job. I'm really glad I chose to listen to it. And part of that is because Michelle Williams just did a phenomenal job. So kudos to her. I had heard she did a good job and can confirm. I am so glad that Brittany had a space to tell her story, and she deserves that. I mean, she deserves a lot more than that, but that's like the bare minimum that this woman deserves. So I'm so glad she had that. That being said, this book was so short. So short. And there were so many parts that I felt like she just glossed right over. And I know the big thing that she wanted to get across in this book was the conservatorship, because that's the big, you know, pie in the sky thing that everyone has like, we want to hear Brittany's like opinion of the conservatorship. We want to hear her story, blah, blah, blah. And I agree. Like, I also want to hear that part. But this is one of the biggest pop stars of all time. Like, I wanted to hear about her career. Like, I wanted to hear about her rise to fame more. I wanted to hear about her music making like process and what that was like, and what it was like to go through that, and performances and things like that. Like, maybe I'm in the like minority here, but I wanted to know more about those things. And I felt like she really glossed over those things. She did talk about some of it, but in a very vague, like general sense. I mean, I just wanted more. I wanted more. I also wanted to hear more about her story with Kevin Federline. I know that she was super deeply in love with him, and I know that their relationship was really good before it got bad. You know, so I thought that like all that was very condensed. You know, like her relationship with him, like it was like she was in love one day, she was pregnant, then things were going downhill, then she got pregnant again, and then like he stopped talking to her completely. Like, I felt like it happened like in the span of like, I don't know, 5 pages, we like got all that. And I'm like, was there nothing in between? Like, nothing at all? And I want to issue a caveat that I think that Brittany is someone who went through some really hard, tough things. And I think that when you do that, when you're like psychologically abused over and over again, you disassociate. Like, it's a scientific fact. Like, you forget things. Like, you pluck them from your brain and they don't register anymore as something that happened to you. And I really think that's what happened to Brittany in a lot of these cases. So I want to give credence and validity to the fact that she probably like cannot access some of the things that I'm asking for as a reader. So I don't want to blame her for that or like degrade this book because of that, but as you know, for a reading experience, like I just wanted more. One of the best celebrity memoirs, if not the best celebrity memoir I've ever read, is Jessica Simpson's Open Book. This book was so well done, so well done, and she's thick. Like it's a thick book, but oh my gosh, I wish Brittany could have given us what Jessica gave us. But I also see that it's probably not in her capacity at this point in her life to give us that. I guess maybe I was expecting that because Jessica just gave us so much. Like, I honestly think about rereading that memoir like so often. And I don't think I've ever reread a memoir ever, but like it was so good. If you have not read that book, go read it. So I don't know, maybe I'm just comparing it to that, and because of that, it came up short. Overall, I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I really did like it and enjoy it. I'm glad I listened to it, but I wanted so much more. The next book I picked up is called The Rachel Incident by Caroline O'Donoghue. This book was recommended on a couple of book podcasts that I listened to. Like, several people said it was one of their favorite books of the year. So I thought, why the heck not? I saw it at the library and I just picked it up, and I thought I would give it a try. Our main character, Rachel, is a student working at a bookstore, and she meets James while working there, and they immediately become fast friends and move in together and just become like so intertwined in their lives. And there's another character in this book that it kind of revolves around. It's one of her professors. His name is Dr. Fred Byrne. And their lives like slowly start to intertwine and intertangle in ways that I don't want to tell you because I don't want to give away a big part of the plot. But this book was interesting. I ended up giving this book 3 stars. It really did not live up to the hype that I was hearing everywhere. I don't know if I just had too high of expectations, but I have mixed feelings about Rachel as our main character. I have mixed feelings about her relationship with James and like the way she navigated things. I don't know. It was frustrating at times to have her as our main character, in my opinion. And at other times in the book, like I felt like there was not a clear plot, if that makes sense. Sometimes books are just vibes, not plot. But this, I don't think, it was trying to be heavy. Like there were heavy topics in there about friendship and about love and about affairs and about women's reproductive rights. Those are heavy topics. So it's hard to write a book that's just vibes about heavy topics, in my opinion. I'm glad that we're covering topics like that, specifically women's reproductive rights. It's so, so important. But like, there's got to be a clear plot, in my opinion, to really do those topics justice. I just think this is a book where it was too hyped up for me, and then it didn't live up to that hype, and that's why maybe I can only give it 3 stars. I don't know. You might love it. There were so many people that I heard like thought this was one of their best books of the year, so I don't know. From there, I moved into some good old-fashioned smut. I picked up Practice Makes Perfect by Sarah Adams. This is another book that, as I was listening to end of the year podcasts where they were talking about their favorite books, this book came up a couple of times. So I saw it at my library and I picked it up and decided to give it a shot. This is actually the second book in like a duology kind of, from Sarah Adams. The first one is called When in Rome, and I say duology because you don't have to read one to read the other, but the characters are similar from one book to the other. So our main character is Annie Walker, and she lives in a small town, Rome, Kentucky, owns a flower shop, and is like this quintessential girl next door, quiet, put together, just wants to live her small little life. I think I like this little life. Like, that's Annie Walker to a T. But she's wanting to move to that next chapter of her life and lacks experience, if you know what I mean. In the first book, we hear the story of Annie's brother, Noah, and his soon-to-be wife, Amelia, who is a pop star. So if you want their story, you have to read When in Rome, but they are, of course, like side characters in this second story. And enter Amelia's bodyguard, Will, who is in town giving Amelia security for the upcoming wedding. He is a big, burly, handsome, tattooed, wonderful man who has experience, and he forms a friendship with Annie, and she talks him into giving him lessons on how to date, how to put herself out there more. She's just very shy. She doesn't know how to interact on dates, things like that. This is what I think you would call a closed door romance. So unlike Tessa Bailey books, if you've read her books, where she is giving details about the, you know, things going on, there's no details. It's just like, and then they went to the room and made sweet, passionate love. Like, there's no details like you would in a Tessa Bailey book. So if you want the real smutty smut, this isn't it. But it is really cute, and it was really well done. I liked the small town vibes. There was one scene in the middle where they go to a baseball game, and I was like almost laughing out loud, which is hard for me when it comes to like a book like this, but it was funny. Like, it was funny. It made me laugh. It was cute. The main characters were cute. I gave it 3 stars. The only way to follow up some smut is to pick up a thriller that involves a little bit of murder. So next up, I read The Only One Left by Riley Sager. So our 2 main characters in this are Lenora and Kit. Lenora is an old woman who lives in this big estate on a hill, but she has a troubled past because in her teen years she was accused, but it was never proven, that she killed her mother, her father, and her sister. So she's like this folklore of a person in town, and everyone is like scared of her. But she's an old woman now, has had several strokes, and like needs care. Kit, our other main character, gets the job to care for her, and she doesn't want it, but she has to take it because her previous person in her care like died while under her care. So she's like under investigation, or she's under like, what do you call it? Like a performance improvement plan, basically, like corporate talk. Like, she was on suspension. She was on suspension for 6 months, and this is like the only job she can get coming back. So this is the job she gets, and she slowly starts to get to know Lenora and like her and feel like there is more to the story than like the rumor of what she's been accused of in the past. So Kit, like, slowly, against her better judgment, tries to unpeel the layers here, and of course it leads here, there, up, all around. Like, this again was classic Riley Sager, like the first book, in that there were so many plot lines that went every which direction, which can be chaotic, but he does such a good job of weaving them together and then wrapping them up with a bow at the end that I just really like. Again, I could not put this down. It was so good, so fast-paced. I ended up giving this one 4.5 stars. It was so close to being 5 stars, but there were a couple things at the end that I thought were a little like far-fetched, maybe, that I didn't feel I could give it fully 5, but so close. Like, this guy knows how to write thrillers. I can't wait to read his backlog, but then he has another book coming out this summer, I think, that's called In the Middle of the Night, I think. I don't know why that sounds right to me. Probably because it's like a Taylor Swift song. In the middle of the night, in my dreams. Like, that's probably why. I think that's what it's called. Anyway, that's coming out later this year. I can't wait for that, and I'm gonna definitely read his entire backlog. So another great book from Riley Sager. Next up, I went back for some more smut and I read Secretly Yours by Tessa Bailey. So just like I was talking about before with Practice Makes Perfect, this is a duo book thing, and I actually read the second one first last year, Unfortunately Yours, and this is actually the first one. Again, it's just two siblings, like love stories, so you don't really need to read them in order if you don't want to. In this book, our two main love stories are Hallie and Julian. Julian is a like studious professor who has come back to his family vineyard to write a book and needs like time away from being a teacher and all the chaos there to like stick to his schedule to write his book. And Hallie is someone who lives in the town all year round. She is a gardener, and she is hired to like come spruce up the, you know, gardens at his family vineyard. And they actually know each other kind of from high school. He was older than her and she was like much younger, and they almost kissed at a party when they were teens. They become friends and a little bit more, obviously, but there's a secret letter aspect of this book that I thought was very, very cringe, and I did not think added much to the story. All of these, you know, smut rom-com books are going to be a little cringe in my opinion, but that's why I read them. Like, they're a palate cleanser. I know what I'm getting into. It's fine. But I really just didn't think this was Tessa Bailey's best work. This is like my 4th or 5th book of hers I read, and I really like her writing style. She's very spicy. She has good, funny characters. Like, she does a good job in this genre. She really does. But this was not it. I think I ended up giving this like 2.5 stars. After that, I moved on to another audiobook. I listened to Girl with No Job by Claudia Oshry. I am an OG toaster. I have been listening to The Toast for years. I love Jackson Claude. I ride for them so hard. So I'm kind of surprised it took me so long to get to this book. That being said, I'm really glad I chose to listen to it because it felt like an extended version of the podcast, and I love the podcast. So I really liked this for what it was. You know, it was just an influencer memoir and fluffy. And like I said, it was an extended version of the podcast. I love the podcast, so great. The last book I read in January is called We Should All Be Millionaires, A Woman's Guide to Earning More, Building Wealth, and Gaining Economic Power. This is by Rachel Rogers. I had seen this recommended a couple different places, and it is one of my goals for 2024 to be more financially literate, and specifically to take money advice from women. I have read a lot of financial books, and they're all by old white guys. Nothing against them, to be honest with you. Great, super awesome. This was really tactical. There's a lot of really, like I said, like step-by-step advice for how to go about budgeting and like making more money, finding new ways to make money. I loved that one of her principles was like, instead of shrinking ourselves, we as women are taught so much to cut back. Like your frilly little manicures and your little lattes and all this other stuff. Like, oh my God, you're so extra. Like, we are taught by men or by society to like cut back and take those things away to save money. She like really, I thought, embraced like, don't feel bad for what you like. Find other ways to support like what you like. She was like, still be smart. Like, don't spend money you don't have, but like stop trying to find ways to shrink, which I was grateful to hear. I think I need to hear it over and over and over and over again in order to really compute it into my brain. But I enjoyed this a lot. I read 3/4 of it, and then I left for my trip back to Kansas City, and I ended up listening to the latter half of it on audiobook, and I really liked it. I felt like she was talking right to me, and I felt like she was a friend. So recommend. The other great thing about this, as you can see from the cover, she's not only a woman, she's a Black woman, and we love getting advice from women, but also women of color. Like, it's great. I want more of that in this year, and I plan to seek out more books like that. Get advice from women, not just men, like women of color, women. Like, I'm a woman, I want women's advice. All right, y'all, that is gonna do it for this little reading recap for the month of January. If you have read any of these books that I mentioned and have thoughts about them, put them in the comments below because I am always wanting to talk about books, to be honest with you. You can find me on Instagram, TikTok, all the places. Like, just look, I'm there. Thank you so much for being here. I'm sending you so much love wherever you are in the world. Air kisses, and I'll see you again very soon in my next video. Bye.